Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Your voice is low, so just try and increase it a little bit.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I
Good
hope you can see
afternoon.
my screen.
Good afternoon, Babatunde.
Yeah, we can.
All right. Yeah. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of what we've done so far and what we are going to do today. Yeah. So I think in the last 3 weeks or so, we started with building an expense request app. So the essence of this app is to have an app where people can make requests for a particular amount within the organization and gets it approved by certain persons, and after it has been approved, so at this point of the approval, you are getting notified that okay, it has been approved by this person, or if it was also rejected as well, you get notified. So that is the essence of this, and transforming from the usual paper method to a digital method, right? So far we've been able to use about 2 or 3 applications. um, so we have the SharePoint lists, which is our data source, right? So here we started by creating a SharePoint list, containing set of columns like the title of your expense, the name of the employee who is the person requesting, the name of the customer, the type of expense, the amounts, the currency, all of this information that we need while requesting for, the expense. So the other thing we're able to do after creating our SharePoint list, which is our data source, was to also have an app which was created with Power Apps. So from this app, people can, quickly go and make new requests, put the title, the employee name, all the different information that are needed, submit it. You can also see history of your previous requests that you've made, right? So you can view all those information as well from here. You can search by the title of the expense, right? So we are also able to do that from here. So um from our last class, we said the next thing we need to do now is so we now have our application that helps us create the request and submit it to our data source, which is on SharePoint. So the next thing we want to do is to have um the automation done. So like we mentioned, after it's being submitted, certain people needs to get notified that okay, this social person has submitted a request, and this other person you need to approve or reject. So based on whatever action the person takes, if it was approved or rejected, the initiator now gets notified to say yes, this request has been approved or it has been rejected, as the case may be. And maybe after approving by being approved by the manager, might also go to maybe the finance team to notify them that yes, this request has now been approved by so and so. So that is what we are going to be focusing on today. And the application we are going to be using is Power Automate. So we'll see how that speaks to what we have done on the SharePoint as well as Power Apps. Our SharePoint has been our data source, and the Power Apps is the interface where the end users will be making their request from, just like an app where you can go and create your expense and also view the history of your expense. So the Power Automate now will be the part that will be doing all of the back-end automation based on certain conditions you've predefined, saying when it has been approved by this, go to this, when this person submits, notify this person, and the likes. So this is the Power Automate interface. So for the sake of people who are quite new to this, so to get to Power Automate, so you can go to flow.microsoft.com. So it used to formerly be called Microsoft Flow before the change in name, I think about 2 years ago, where the name changed to Power Automate. So it's one of the applications on the Power Platform where we have the Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Virtual Agents. So I think we are still going to be talking about Power BI, I think immediately after this. So yes, this is the interface for Power Automate. So basically, it's an application that you use to, as the name implies, automate your business processes. You have some repetitive tasks that you do manually. You can just hand it over to Power Automate, and it helps you, allows you to focus on other things while Automate carries out those tasks for you. So there are a couple of things I want us to also note. So like the templates. So there are certain templates that already exist on Power Automate. So some pre-built templates where you can quickly start your automation. So if you have something that speaks to what you are trying to do, you can pick from any of the available templates. So you can see save attachments from your Outlook to your Dropbox. So maybe when you receive a new email from your Outlook, you want to save those attachments from the Outlook to your your Dropbox or your Google Drive, or maybe a folder on your SharePoint, or you want to get a reminder. So, or you want to even schedule a tweet, right? Or you want to get notified when somebody mentions you or mentions some certain keywords, about a tweet. So, all of that is very much possible using the Power Automate, as you can see from here. So, well, in this case, we are going to be creating our flow from the scratch, so we have a better understanding. Now, from here, if you go to my flows, we have this option of new flow. So new flow allows to start from a template, a visual template. Now we have different types of flows, or let me say triggers, right? So here we have automated cloud flows. So automated cloud flow is a tree. So there are certain triggers under this. So a trigger is what will make your flow start in the first place, right? So you have your flow created and turned on, but there has to be something that triggers it. There has to be something that tells you to say, oh yeah, you need to start work at this point, right? So when you have under automated flows, there are certain triggers. So if I select this now, you can see when a new response is submitted, when an item is created. So the triggers under this is when a particular action takes place, then the flow automatically starts at that point. So we can see that there is a particular one we have here saying when an item is created on SharePoint. So this is the data source below. This is the name of the trigger. So when an item is created on SharePoint, or when a new response is submitted on Microsoft Forms. So which means the flow will just keep waiting until any of this action happens. So when a new response is submitted, the flow starts. Or when a new item is created on whatever SharePoint list you've connected it to, it starts. Or when an item is created or modified, meaning when you create a new item or you modify an existing item, then the flow starts. When a new file is created in the folder, when a file is created in OneDrive for Business. So there are a couple of them. You can see even your Gmail, which is even not a Microsoft product. So like we mentioned earlier, there are several data sources that the Power Platform generally can connect to, either within or outside of Microsoft products or Office 365 even. So it gives you the ability to connect to those data sources. So you can even trigger a flow based on your Gmail account. So say when you receive a new email, maybe you want to perform certain actions with that, so you can define all the actions. So these are different triggers under the automated cloud flows. Also, we have the instant cloud flow. So instant cloud flows are flows that there needs to be a particular action you would take for it to start. So which means you have to either manually click on a button to trigger it, or even from your Power Apps. So we can create a flow that says when I click on a button on my Power Apps, then the flow should start. So all of these are majorly actions that you have to manually yourself do something before the flow starts. Then we have scheduled cloud flow. So scheduled cloud flow is just one, which means you want to schedule it to run at certain periods. So it could be maybe every 1 minute, or every 10 minutes, or every 30 minutes, or seconds, or every hour, or every day, or every 2 days, and all that, or even every week or month. So you just define at what period you want it to run. So if I say every week, I might just want it to run every Monday to Friday. So I'll just highlight those days that I want it to run. So maybe every weekday, or even every month, right? So I can specify what date of the month I want it to run and what time as well. So I want it to be running at 7 a.m. on the first of every month, right? So that is what this. So it means I don't need to manually go to that list to or to any of my data sources or anything to go and trigger it. So this flow we just keep waiting till the period that I've specified, and once that period comes, it just starts the flow automatically by itself. So based on the schedule that I've given to it. Then we also have desktop flows, which are flows that are, so there is a Power Automate desktop that you can install on your system. So it's majorly for RPA. RPA is robotic process automation, whereby you have applications on your system or tasks you perform on your local system. So you can just train the desktop flow to say these are the actions I want to take. Click on this, go to this app, do this for me. So that's desktop flow. Then business process flow mostly used for Power Apps, model driven apps. So, but for today, the one we are going to be focusing on is the automated cloud flows. So, because our data source is SharePoint, we are going to be using, we can use either of these actually, when an item is created or when an item is created or modified. Though personally, I now prefer the when an item is created or modified. Now, when an item is created means once my item has been created on my SharePoint, then trigger this flow. So every of my actions there can now be done within my flow. So which means even when I modify my item, it doesn't trigger a new flow for that particular item that has been created. It only triggers the first time that I have created that item. So within my flow, I can now define to say, okay, after my item has been created, send an email to this person, start and wait for approval. When this person approves, go to the next person and every other thing. But when an item is created or modified, means that when you create an item, it triggers the flow. When you modify an existing item, it also triggers a new flow, right? So the reason I prefer this is because it kind of keeps your flow not waiting, not running. What's the word now? So when an item is created means until it has gotten to the last stage or until the final person has approved or rejected, that's when the flow will stop. So the flow will keep being in a perpetual running state. But when an item is created or modified, kind of saves you that stress, because when you create an item, it just does the approval. So once the approval has, maybe the first person, it has sent the first mail and the first person has approved, it's that particular flow stops. Then it triggers a new one for the new person. Okay, so I'm going to select when an item is created or modified. Then also when you are creating some certain complex flows, your when an item is created might not be very effective, right? Especially when you have cases whereby so in this case now we are just going to say, okay, when this person creates, the manager can approve or reject. There are certain kind of complex flow that you create whereby the manager can return it back to the initiator to make corrections. So, and the way flow runs, it runs in a sequential form. So which means if I have new actions here and I create every action, it runs this first one, goes to the next action, and I can't go to a previous action within this flow, right? And imagine when somebody returns, it means he needs to go back to the previous guy and say, okay, make the adjustment and resubmit, and it comes back to this person. And that could happen, a lot of times. So which means I can make correction and the person returns it again and returns it again. So in this case, your when an item is created, it might not be very effective because there's no way for you to really go back to a previous step. But when an item is created or modified, can help you solve that problem, which means when the person returns, it goes back to the previous person and it just triggers a new flow. And then when you submit, it triggers a new flow that goes to the next, the previous person again. So, all right. Now, one thing I want us to do, okay, so what we need to first do, so this is our trigger. So every flow must have a trigger. So like I mentioned, the trigger is what triggers your flow, what condition or what action will even make your flow kick off in the first place. So in our case now, we are saying it's when an item is created or modified on a SharePoint, right? So first off, we need to select the site address, which is the our SharePoint site URL. Then we need to select the list, the particular list. So if we have several lists, to show the different lists, so you select which list you are connecting to. So which means when an item is created or modified on the SharePoint list, on this particular SharePoint list on this site. So that is what this means. Now we can now define our different actions, right? So our first action is when an item is created or modified, I want it to send an email to notify the user. So the user now is the requester, the employee, and send an email to the person that yes, you have submitted your item, a new expense, and it has been successfully submitted, right? And after it has been submitted, I want you to also send an email to the manager and notify the manager that this employee has submitted a particular request, right? So, and the person can see the information of all the details you have filled, like the amount, the currency, the expense title, and all of that, right? So you can put all that as well. So now what we need to first do, okay, let me say what I do is to always have a field called status. So that status helps me track what state this request is in currently, right? So which means at every point I can say my request is approved by my manager, or is pending on my manager, or it has been approved by my by the finance team or something like that. So here now, so like I mentioned in the first class, I said these are not all the columns that we need, but it only makes sense when we get to this point to have them, because if we had created them earlier, it might not make a lot of sense. So from here now, we can add a new column. You can always call it, anything you want. You can call it request status or something that helps you know that, okay, this is the current state of this particular item right now. So I prefer to call mine status. Okay. So now I also like to make it a choice field. You could also make this a single line of text. But personally, I prefer to make it a choice field. And here is the reason. So when I make it a choice field, I can easily define all the possible status that I can have. So I know that when I submit the request, I want the status to be this. When my manager approves, the status should be this. When my manager rejects, the status should be this. When it has been, fully approved or something, the status should be this, right? So, let's say the first status is when I submit, and the status should be pending manager. So pending manager in this case will mean that it's the item is called, the request is currently pending on the manager of that person. So which means with that you can easily know that, okay, it's the manager that has not approved this request yet. So we can also have pending finance. So what we want to do here is, after manager has approved, we want it to also go to the finance team to also approve. So because the finance are the one that will then disburse the money, right? So they need to know, okay, there is available budget for this request you are making. So if it's available, they can approve it, or if not, they can also make their comment and say, no, this has been rejected due to maybe insufficient fund availability or something like that, right? So that's why I want to have finance here as well. Then we can also have manager rejected, because of course your manager can reject it. And we can have manager approved, or finance rejected now. Right? So, and this is just at your own discretion. So you can make it, more descriptive of whatever you want. So just to understand that this is what, this particular action or status means. So after manager rejected, finance rejected, okay, so we want to have approved. So approved, they mean when it has been approved by both your manager and the finance. So these are the possible actions. Let's see if we are right. So when you submit, it goes to your manager. So in that case, to be pending manager. If your manager approves, it goes to finance, which will be pending on finance. And when finance approves, it goes to approved, which means it has been fully approved by all the parties. So the parties could be more than this. Maybe after manager, it needs to go to your HR, depending on your use case or the requirement of the business. Then manager rejected is if when it gets to manager and my manager decides to reject it for any reason, or when finance rejects, we have finance rejected. So with this now we can save. As time goes on, if the flow changes at some point and you need to update this, you can always come back to update all of these actions. So from here I'll just save. Right, so we now have our status column. So what I do again is to have so now after your trigger, this is, you can only have one trigger in a particular flow, right? So any other thing you will have after this will be set of different actions. So which means after my flow has triggered, I just want to tell you to do this, do this, do this, and and do this. So there are certain, so all of these are called connectors. There's a lot of connectors. That is, these are things that help you connect to different data sources, right? You can see Twitter, like I mentioned earlier. You want to schedule a tweet or something. You can see Slack. You can see Power Apps. You can see a lot of different uh, uh, applications, whether within Microsoft or even outside Microsoft solutions. So Office 365, OneDrive, Planner, Excel, SharePoint. So depending on what you are trying to connect to, that would determine which connector you want to use at every point in time. So though some of them requires that you maybe pay extra, right? While some of them are free for use. Now, what I used in this case is I'll go to control. So under control, there are certain set of actions, like condition. If you want to check a condition to say, okay, if this is this, then do this, right? Or apply to each. If you have like an output, like an array output that has several values, and you want it to perform the same set of action on all the items that are returned. You can also use this do until is gives you ability to say, okay, you should keep doing perform a particular action until a certain condition is met, right? Scope is this just allows you to kind of make your flow more structured, so you can just put different actions into a particular scope. So it helps you arrange your flow, quite well. Then switch. So switch is very similar to condition, which is what we are going to be using in this case. Well, it's much more flexible. I prefer it to condition in most cases because it allows you to define. Okay, we'll see that in action while I get to that. So terminate is just to say, okay, when it gets to this point, just terminate the flow, just end the flow at that point, right? So for switch, which you are going to be using, okay, sorry, I don't know if anybody has any questions so far, because I think I've been doing some talking for the last few minutes.
None from my end, but
Okay.
none from my end.
All right. Thank you, David.
But if I can even ask now, at what point do you use a switch?
Sorry?
Can you give me scenarios when you use a switch? Can you give me scenarios when you use switch?
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm about to get into. Okay, now, I want to believe we understand. Okay, so let me first, to make this clearer, I'll also insert a condition. So we'll see the two and compare when to use either of them. So this is condition. So condition is, I want to say if this particular value is this, so I can say, okay, check this title. Is it equal to, or does it contain this, or is not equal to, or is greater than this, or starts with? So I can define any of the actions and say, okay, if it is equal to this or so, right? Then if it's yes, then perform all the actions that I have inside this yes. But if not, perform all the actions that I have here. So those are two actions. So if you have an output that can be either of two options, right? Condition is very perfect for that use case. So I can say if my title is A, do this. Else, if my title is B, do this. Now imagine a case where you can have several outputs. So your title can be A, B, C, D, E, right? That's 5. Now, what that means is if you want to use if condition, it means I have to say if my title is A is equal to A, if yes, do this, right? Now, don't forget that I still have B, C, D, E. What I need to do is to add another action here and say, okay, if my title is not equal to A, go and create another condition inside this if no. Now, I'll now check for my title again and say, if my title is equal to B, do this. Else, which is inside this if no, I now have to create another action again, another condition again, and say if my title is equal to C, do this. So imagine you have like 10 different conditions. You can see how my flow is already looking, right? So it makes your flow so this will still work, right? But readability will be very hard, especially for someone, even you, when you come back to this, it will be very hard for you to track where is what, right? So which is where switch comes in. Now, when you are using a switch statement, it allows you to define multiple possible outputs. So I can check my status or title. Let's use title now and say if my title is equal to A, then I put all my actions here. Now, I can add a new case and say if my title is B, do all this. And add another one and say if my title is C, do this, and add like that. And I keep adding all the different actions. So you see that this looks a lot neater than having all these nested if conditions. So you can see how long this looks, while the same action you can perform with switch looks a lot neater and shorter. So which is why, you know, I personally prefer switch in this kind of case. So in this case, you can see that when we created our status column, we have different possible outputs. So pending manager, pending finance. So we have about 5 different possible status that we can have. So if we are to go by this condition, it means we are going to be having like 4 or 5 different nested conditions. Rather, we can just have our single switch statement, which allows us to define when it's pending manager, when it's pending this, when it's pending this, and approved by this, and define all the different actions that we have inside. I don't know if that's clear, David.
Yeah, it is clear. I get it now. Can you hear me?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just remove this. Or does any other person has any other questions? Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
It's not just
Yes,
a random.
Okay. Yeah, so but in this case, okay, I think Gabriel is raising up his hand.
Okay, I just want to ask, is there a limit to how many cases you can add in a switch?
Well, not that I know of. Not that I know of. Maybe there is, but I'm not sure I've had any case that I think I've built a flow that had up to like 10 or 12 different cases and it was still able to accommodate. I'm not sure if there is really a limit, but it's possible there is a limit, but I haven't exhausted it yet. So I can't really be sure. All right, thanks. Okay, now we have our switch statement. So our switch statements, so what the value we put here on is which column specifically do we want to check, right? So you can see that we have all the different columns that we have created, you know, inside this dynamic content. So dynamic content in Power Automate is a place where you can just pick, you know, dynamic values from your data source, or it could even be from within the flow. So or a previous step within your flow. So what that means is from here now I can pick a particular column. You will see that these are different columns: ID, title, employee name, you know, date of expense, and the likes. These are the columns we had already created on our SharePoint list, and we can just pick from there. So what this means is that check the status value. So if the status value is equals to this, then I can put all the actions that I want. If it is equal to this, I can put all the actions that I want. If it's equal to this, so I can put all the actions and all the different cases. Then default is if it doesn't meet any of the options that I've defined, then what should happen? If nothing should happen, you can just leave this blank. So in most cases, this would probably be blank. So now we have status. So the reason I'm selecting, so if I search for status, you can see that I have status value and I have status. So the reason I'm selecting status value is because this is a choice field. So when you have a choice field or a lookup field, you select the status value. The status itself will show you some sort of ambiguous string, which you might not really understand much for now if you are not very familiar with it. So, but just know that you are selecting status value when it's a choice field. Now, equals now means, so I always prefer to also copy this. So this pending manager, I'll just copy this, because if you have any slight difference, will cause your flow to give you a different result. So this pending manager here, if I have a little space, instead of having it exactly the way I have it here, it means that I would have a different value, and it will not say it has been equal to this pending manager, because pending manager with two spaces or another space here would not mean the same as this, because it also sees space as a character. So you need to be very careful when you are also doing this. Now, after we have this pending manager, we can now add an action. So when this requester submits the request, the first thing is the status should be pending manager. And when it's pending manager, what are the actions we want to perform? So the first action we want to perform is to send an email to the requester himself. So there is a connector called Office 365 Outlook. So under this Office 365 Outlook, there are several actions that can be performed. So one of them is send an email. So send an email allows you to send an email to a specific user, right? So here now we'll just say send an email to, who do we want to send the email to? Now, the good thing, like I mentioned when I was talking about dynamic content, is I can pick from my data source or any of the previous actions within my flow. So here now, I could decide to type in a static value and just search for an email of a particular user within the environment, right? And I'll just select it and it will send an email to this particular email, right? But in this case, this has to be dynamic, because I'm not going to be sending email to this person all the time. If a new person submits, you don't expect me to come to my flow and start changing this to who submitted what, and so you can send the email to the person. I just want it to be intelligent enough to send an email to whoever is the employee that submitted this. So which is where I will go to my dynamic content and search for employee name. So employee name here is the name of, if we recall from our app, is the name that is being automatically picked by whoever is submitting that request. So if we go here and we select employee name email, so which means to send the email to whoever is the employee name on this column here. So that's the person that will receive this email. So we can say expense request submitted. So this is just like a mail that comes to you. When you register in a particular site, you know that when you maybe you just register newly, you get an email instantly saying, "Dear so welcome to our platform, blah blah blah." Of course, with the speed of that, you should know that it's not somebody else that is waiting for somebody to register and say, when I register, okay, send this email to this person. So all those processes has been automated, so that when you just register newly, you just instantly get a new email addressing your specific name that you have put as maybe your first name or last name, and telling you that you are welcome to this with a particular customized message. So that's similar to what we are trying to do here. So when anybody submits, just notify them that the request has been submitted. They will get this email. We can now have in the body and say, "Dear." So we want to also pick the name of the employees that is submitting this, which is the employee name, display name. Now, here we'll see that we have different attributes coming from the employee name. So like I mentioned, the employee name, because it's a person's field, if you remember how we are creating that, is a person's field and is a complex field which has several attributes. So different attributes that we can pick from are what we can see here. I can get the department of the person, the picture, the email, the display name, the job title, and co. So remember when we are also trying to pick the employee's name by default, you remember that we have a complex kind of formula like that has all these attributes combined together. So that's why we have this. So the employee name, even though it shows us just the name of the person here, there are a lot of other things embedded within this. So which includes the email and the rest. So but what we need here is the display name. So and just say the display name. Remember here that we also pick the email. So here we need the display name and say their employee name, your expense request has been successfully submitted. Of course, you can always customize this email as you want and say maybe thank you or regards or whatever one. So you can customize it, as much as you want. You could even go ahead to, put the details of the expense within this email. Say the title of your expense, the amount, and every other thing. But I'll just save that because of time. So the next thing we want to also do is to send an email. Now, this email we are sending to the manager is not just a direct email. It's to be an approval email because he needs to approve. Sorry, not sure what happened here. Okay. Now we need to send an approval email. So you can search for approvals and select start and wait for approval. So start and wait for approval will start an approval to a particular user and wait until the person approves it. So I can say so there are like four actions: approve, reject, everyone must approve, first respond, wait for all responses. So what this means is approve or reject, everyone must approve. So I can actually assign an approval to more than one person and I'll wait for every of them to approve before my flow can proceed. So which means I have maybe a board that needs to approve it and there are 5 of them. So everybody must approve first or at least give their action if that they are approving or rejecting before this flow proceeds to the next step. First to respond means even if I send it to 5 people to approve, once at least one of them approves, then the flow can proceed. So once one person has approved, it assumes that approval for every other person. So the flow can proceed from there. The custom responses, wait for other responses, both are also similar to this. The only difference is that rather than just approve or reject that will show by default, you can have your own custom responses and call it something else. So you can define approve, reject, rework, return, or any other actions that you want. So, but here we just use approve or reject first to respond. Now, this is also similar. This will also come in form of an email. So we can have something like the title and call it expense request approval. Right? Then the email. The email now, because we want to send it to the manager, right? Just the same way we've been able to automatically select the name of the employee that submitted the
Hello, Babatunde, are you there? Hello? Hello, Babatunde. Hello, Babatunde. Musi, can you hear me?
Yes, David, I can hear you.
David, we can hear
okay.
you.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just his network then. Let's just wait for a few minutes. Even though we'll be closing soon. We are doing the part of approvals, and I know that we'll continue the approvals next week. So the whole idea of this series is that we want to build a full application from beginning to the end. That's what we'll be doing. After this, we'll go into Power BI. I will build a full business analysis report, like end of the year reports. We'll do that. So we'll always do that at every point in time. So for every new thing that we start, it might take us 2, 3, 4 weeks to finish up, but that will be the strategy for us in this series as we go. So while we wait a little bit for Tunde, anybody might want to ask questions. We might need feedback from everybody, but just let us know. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Baba Tunde.
Okay, apologies. I guess that was my network.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
All right, please confirm you can see my screen now.
Yeah, it's coming up. It's coming up. Yeah, we can.
Yes, I can see your screen.
All right, thanks. Okay, yeah, so I was talking about the start and wait for approval, where we'll send an approval email to the manager. So the title, which will be like the subject of the email, so just say expense request approval. Then we have the assigned to, which means who are we assigning it to, and this can be more than one person, like I mentioned. So you can have it assigned to multiple people, right? So maybe people in the finance department, for example, you could have maybe 3 or 4 people who can treat that particular request. So if one of them has treated it and approved, then it means he's approving on behalf of every other person. So you can have that as well. But in this case, we just need one approval, which is the manager. So we select the manager name's email from the dynamic content, right? Which is what I just did here, and we have it here. So the details here is now the body of the email. So this body of the email can now contain, different actions or different bits about that particular request. So the details could include the title, the amount, the currency as filled by, the initiator. So say hello. We could even address the manager because we have the details of the manager here. So we could address the person by the name and say hello, the manager display name. Or you have a new request. submitted by, so we can say, you can pick the name of the employee. Please. So, don't mind my English. I'm not very good with English. So you have a new expense request submitted by so and so. Of course, you can any message as you want it, right? So we have please find below details. So you can now put details of the requests here. So I think one of the details we will need is the title. So title, we select the title, the dynamic content. Okay. We also have the expense type. So because our expense type is also a choice field, we select the expense type value. The currency and amounts. So currency, also have amounts, and select that from the dynamic content as well. The currency value because the choice field, and the amount here as well. Okay, with the date of expense. And select that here. Okay, and say kindly approve or reject. Thank you. Okay, so here is the mail that goes to the approver, which is the manager in this case, saying, hello, so you have a new request submitted by this person, which awaits your approval. Please find below the details, and it contains the title. So this is dynamic, so which means any title you have put for that request will show up here. The expense type, your currency, your amounts, your date of expense, and it tells the person to approve or reject. So when this mail gets to the person has two options from the mail to click on approve or reject. So, okay, let me remove this cases so we can save our flow. So always also remember to always save your flow. Because unlike on Power Apps, which auto saves after you have saved the first time, Power Automate doesn't. So if you forget to save it, then you might need to start over again. So let's call it expense requests. Permission. And we can just save. Okay, so your flow is ready, so we can add the other cases as time goes on and keep saving. So after this, the next thing we want to do from here is to have a condition. So because the manager can have two actions to either approve or reject, we can select condition. So in this case, depending on what you are also trying to do, so if the approval also has like 4 or 5 different actions that you can take, maybe approve, reject, return, or something like that. So you can also have another switch statement within here, right? But because it's just there are just two possible actions, it's either he approves or he rejects. So condition is perfect for this use case. So the outcome is what we'll select from the dynamic content. So remember I said your dynamic contents can pick values from your data source, which is your trigger here, or a previous action. If I go to my send an email, I won't see all these other actions, all the other values coming from this start and wait for approval. So if I go here now and I click on my dynamic contents, you see that I can only see the ones coming from this my SharePoint, which is my trigger here. Because this action has not taken place, because our flow is sequential, so this action has not taken place here. So there's no way it can pick a value from this guy and bring it here yet. So that's why you can't find it. But if I get here now, if I get to the next action after this start and wait for approval, then I can see the values coming from this, and I can pick whichever one I want to pick from here. So what I need here is the outcome. So this outcome is what the outcome of the action, the person approved or rejected. So if he approved, then this outcome will be approved. If he rejects, it will be rejected. So I can now say if it's equal to approve, right? I can put all the actions that should happen here. And if he rejects, I can put my actions here. So if he approves, the first thing I might want to do is update my item. So update item is an action that allows you to automatically update your item on SharePoint. So let me search for update item. So you see update item, it means I want to update this my item. So what I want to majorly update is the status column, because it's currently pending manager, and because my manager has approved, I want to update it to something else, which is maybe pending finance or something. So you select the list. The ID will be the ID of, because this item I'm trying to update is this. Because this is required, I need to put the title. So what I need to now update. So this is one other reason I also prefer to use a choice field. So from here now, I can easily select from the different options that are already defined and select which one. So if I had made it a single line of text, I have to keep manually typing those values, and you could also make mistakes with them. So if you have a single space or comma which differentiates this, it will give you a different result. So I can have this status value and select pending finance. So which means after my manager has approved, then it should now go to finance and should be pending on finance. But if he rejects, let me just copy this. So you can also copy actions within Power Automate, and I'll paste that here. Okay, so I can't paste within it. So that's one limitation. You can't paste an action you have copied within a switch case. So it's always giving error. So what I do is to paste it outside and drag it inside. So once I've pasted this now, I can put this here. Yeah, so then that works. So what I need to just change here is the status. So manager rejected. So which means if my manager does not approve it, it obviously means he has rejected, and the status should change to manager rejected. So let me save this. Okay, yes, so this should work now, and we should have the flow running up to the point of manager approving or rejecting. So just to do a quick test, even though we are not done with our flow yet, let's just see how this works out quickly. Because of our time, I think we might have to continue this next week, but just for us to see how what we have been able to do here works. If it works so far, let's see. So this is so going back to our app now, this is our, okay, so let me select a default value. So okay, one thing I also do here is to select a default value, which means when the user submits the request, what should the default status be? So in this case, I'll select pending manager, because when the requester submits, it should automatically be pending on the manager. So save that. Okay, right. So let's go back to our app and select our title. So we want to test our automate. Let's call that our expense title. We select the expense type. We select the currency, put in the amount. Let's leave the date as today. Okay. Let's leave. I'm just going to select this account, same as the manager. Why is it showing this way? So I just want, because I'm testing now, I just want it to also be the one to receive, the email. So let me just submit this. Okay. So it showed me that it has been successfully submitted, and that should drop here now. So we can see that this has now been submitted, and our status is currently on pending manager. So I believe in a few seconds I should receive an email. So two emails actually. One should come to me as the requester, which means I've submitted the one that tells me that my request has been successfully submitted as we have defined here, right? Then I should get another one as the manager. So ideally, I'm not supposed to be the ones to get this, but because we are just testing, I've selected myself as the manager, right? So let's check our email. So we can see that this is the first one that comes. So there, your expense request has been successfully submitted. Thank you. So the next one has just come in again. So it's also saying hello this. So this will address your the manager. Your expense request submitted by this person, which awaits your approval. Please find below the details. So we can see the details, which is the title, the expense type, the currency, the amount, and also the date, and kindly approve or reject. So which is everything we have defined in our flow. So based on what you have customized, that's what the email that the approval will receive. Then we have the option to either approve or reject. So if I decide to approve here and I submit, then the my status should update to pending finance. So if you see here, we can see that it has automatically updated to pending finance, because we've not defined the action that should happen when it's pending finance. We might not have that run yet. So if we go back to our flow, so there is also an history to every flow that is being triggered. So you can track if it failed at any point, you can see where it failed. You can see all the different actions that we are taking within your flow. So I'm just going here to see. So when an item is created, this was successful. So inside my switch statements now, to check what my status is, right? And so my status was pending manager, and then it sends an email. So it will show the email that was sent, who the email was sent to, and also the start and wait for approval, everything, every information about the details and everything, person that approved, the responder's name, email, the time you approved, and everything. And also this part, which is if it is true or not. So because our condition says if it is approved, so it checks if it's approved, which is yes, and it does this update here. So because it wasn't rejected, this part will not run. right? So if I had rejected, then it would have updated it to something else, which is manager, rejected. So I think we'll just stop here for today because of our time, and we should be able to complete these parts next week. Thank you very much for listening. I don't know if anybody has any questions so far. No, I've been doing a lot of talking all day.
Okay, I think Adeyinka's question. Adeyinka, can you ask?
Thank you, Babatunde, for the training. So I have a question concerning approval card. Is it possible
Okay.
to, for example, now to embed the link inside an approval card? Maybe like an Apple link. Maybe you want to a link that will link you back to Power Apps. Is it possible to put it in approval card?
Yes. So the approval card uses a language called Markdown language, right? So it's not the regular HTML like you can have when you are using send an email, where you put the A tag, anchor tag, and put your href and put your link. But on the or when you are using approval or approval card, it uses a markdown language. So for example, if I want to make this bold, there's a method I'll use by starting this title with star star and ending it with star star. So that will make it bold. So if you go to aka.ms/approval details. Yeah. Okay. So this will show you different methods that you can use. So for example, for that hyperlink, you need to start it with the what should be displayed as a square bracket. Then you put your link in a round bracket like this, right? So let's check here so you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so you can see the link texts and the link URL here. So for example, you want to link to Power Automate, you just put Power Automate in this square bracket, while the link will be inside this round bracket. So when the person gets the email, this will come as an hyperlink within the mail. So the person will just see Power Automate, and when you click on it, it directs you to this flow.microsoft.com. So you can do the same with your Power Apps. So you can just copy the link on your Power Apps and put the link here, and then it directs the person here. Then on this, even if you are using this start and wait for approval, it's even a little easier because you can put your link directly here and type in the link that it should take you to, as well as the link description. That is the text that should be displayed here as well. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you very much. I will appreciate if you can share that link where you have the documentation for it, so that we can just pick it up.
Okay.
On this
all right.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions?
Adeyinka, did you used to receive our email?
Hello?
Yeah, Adeyinka, did you used to receive our email?
Yes, the shade normally sent to us.
Yes. Okay,
I
I'm
do.
going to drop I'll drop the link there too.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. So if there's no question, we are sorry that we are able to we will shoot the time by 15 minutes. But this is good. Let me ask Babatunde, what is the next step after this? What do you think is our next step after this?
Okay, yeah. So I think the next step is we should be able to complete the automation part by next week. So currently we've gotten to the stage where the person submits the request, receives an email that the request has been successfully submitted, and the manager also gets notified that there's an approval awaiting his action, and he can decide to approve or reject. And once he has approved or reject, it also updates the status. So based on our flow, the manager, after the manager has approved, we are supposed to also have the finance team who are also supposed to carry out an approval. So they will also either approve or reject the requests. And then if it was also rejected as well, we need to also have an email go to the requester to tell them that this request has been rejected, and maybe the manager puts a reason, they get the details of that reason. Same with finance as well. So it's just basically completing these particular parts that are left. So the finance parts, sending the email, sending the requester the email that it has been approved or rejected. So we also notice that when it was approved by the manager, we don't have an email that notifies the requester yet that this has been approved or it has been rejected. So we also need to have that. So I think basically what we have left is not very much. So it's just basically completing, this automation end to end, and we see how everything, works out.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much, Babatunde. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. We are going to continue. I'll record this, we'll download it, and also upload it as we do for others. Okay, Gabriel, I think you want to ask a question, Gabriel.
Okay, so sorry, I just got this link from Twitter, so I don't know if there's a way I can be updated about when next is going to come up so that I can join.
Oh, okay. So you can just how are we going to get the link now? Can you see the chat? I don't know, Gabriel, can you see the chat?
I can't see the chat.
The chat is
okay.
disabled.
This is what you do. Okay, maybe we'll talk offline. So let's talk offline. I'll get your email. I'll add it to the emails that we send reminders to. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Babatunde. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Foyin. Foyin, are you still here, Foyin? Okay, I think Foyin is not here, but I can see her. But thank you, everybody. We're going to see next week while we conclude the automation process. Take care and enjoy the remaining days of the weekend. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Ó dàbọ̀ mà.